everyone, this is Arti from Human Chapters. I'll explain a little bit about the human chapters. Humans are living narratives with a past, present, and future. These narratives constitute of a number of chapters across the lifespan. The aim of these conversations is to highlight a chapter of the narrative and unpack its connections to other chapters. I don't care whether people are natural storytellers, but I truly do believe each one of us has a worthy story to share. Here's an acknowledgement to country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, past and present and emerging. We celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. And today we are going to be speaking to Nathan, and Nathan's chapter is Silent Poet 6. So I'll pass on the floor to Nathan. Go for it, Nathan.
Thanks, Artie.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Nathan Karkek. I'm an artist, author, and a coach. So in my day job, I'm a mindset and leadership coach with Minds on Purpose, a business I co-founded a little over 12 months ago. And authored my first book, Words of Light to Awaken the Silent Soul, a poetry book last year.
Wow.
And you know, had some of my art in as part of the Shepparton Festival this year, and now got an online shop for art as well. So a very different introduction to myself today than what it would have been 18 months ago, Artie.
Wow. That sounds so amazing to sort of hear, about that sort of wholesome, well-roundedness. And Nathan, tell us where did your journey begin? What was it like, and what led you to become an artist, author, and coach?
Yeah, so just a couple little things in there, Artie. I grew up a dairy farmer, and for me, ag science at uni and farming was certainly where I saw my future. When I was younger, I loved the land. I love being outdoors. I love animals. So that's where I thought I'd be. And my brother came home onto the farm, and it wasn't big enough for both of us. And I got off and did some agronomy, so soil science and on-farm animal health stuff, and literally found my way into banking. And found myself in a 17-year banking career, and it was awesome. It's where I really developed my love for people and my love for people development. And I'm sure you'll touch on it later, but I'll come back to that. But there was a period of time where I lost that love for people, and for me, I actually found it quite anxious at the end of my corporate career. And so the 17 years leading, or 11 of those leading large teams, and loved it. So working with business clients and teams and people's development. And my Silent Poet 6 journey began, I guess, after a 2-year stint of health issues in my banking career. And so I had a seizure, and I was in hospital for 10 days, and tried, lots and lots of tests to try and work out what happened, and couldn't find it. And then I ended up having a squamous cell cancer taking off my lip. And so I thought, I'm right now. I can run through this next brick wall. I'm ready to go again. And then I had a third of my liver taken out. And it was still all okay. I was getting up and I was going to run at that brick wall again, because that's what you do. And that's what I could always do, was run through brick walls. And I went back to work and I thought, yep, I've got this. I'm going to run through this brick wall. And I had to tell the team that one of our teammates who I'd worked with for 13 years was off work indefinitely with cancer. And that was a brick wall that I couldn't run through. And I went to the car and cried when I thought I could run through that brick wall. I couldn't. And that was the start for me of really assessing or reassessing
Mm.
where I was in life and the things that I'm doing. And it's been a journey
Yeah.
since then. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about wellness. I've learned a lot about stress and anxiety.
Mm.
If I look back now of where I was, and I think about things like my memory.
Yeah.
It was terrible, but you just go, I'm busy all the time. There's lots of other signs there, particularly the physical signs, but lots of other signs there that things weren't quite right. But we're so used to running at brick walls. So that was the start of my Silent Poet 6 journey, and gave me a chance to tap into some of my earlier passions around poetry and music. And I discovered art. I wouldn't say that it was tapping back into art, but I discovered art in that process as well.
Wow. What a roller coaster.
Mm.
Like listening to you going through that journey. I do have a question. Did you have a specific breaking point or plural points? And what were they, or what was it? And
Yeah, I think, and I've thought a lot about this one in hindsight or in retrospect, Artie, because at the time, if I look back now, I've always been creative,
Mhm.
and I've always loved to be creative. And so therefore, in the teams that I led, we tried to do things differently and innovate, and always tried to do things a little bit better. Not necessarily to always get better results, but um, to try and be better for the team. And some of that was making it easier to do things. Some of it was performance driven, etc. But when I look at that, I've always been creative and wanted to do more. And there's only so creative you can be in some settings. And so if I think back now and be really, really honest with myself, there was probably lots of breaking points where I wasn't truly being me. And I wasn't truly doing the things that I love. And, I think you look at all of those little breaking points and how they start stress and anxiety, and then, workloads, other things
Yeah.
come on top, and it all adds together. So, but the breaking point certainly was going to my car and crying, but that was just the last straw. If I look back at all of those other little breaking points of, not listening to my body,
Yeah.
not really following the things I love, all little signs now in retrospect that I can say, why didn't I listen to myself?
Yeah. And Nathan, when you say not listening to your body, when you're in the thick of things, it's difficult to acknowledge or identify it. But again, in hindsight or retrospect, what does not listening to your body actually look like?
Yeah, I think that not listening, people always say, listen to your gut.
Mm.
And certainly it's something that I grew up with, was people around me saying, just listen to your gut. But in reality, how often do we actually listen
Yeah.
to our gut? And in reality, if we were to listen to our gut, what generally do people say to us? And it's generally logic driven. And so even when we listen to our gut, there's generally comments around this that override and say, why? But, there's all of these other things. And so, when I say listen to yourself, I mean really, really listen to yourself, not all of the other voices around, and think deeper than just what's going on the surface. I certainly know I had lots of ailments, hurt in a lot of spots, and did a lot of traveling and whatever else. Now, on the surface of it, they're just things, but when you start to go a little bit deeper and listen, what are they telling you? Where you're at? Um, so, and I've learned a little bit more about the energetic side of the world in my last little bit of a journey, and certainly some of our aches and pains can tell us a lot of things if we're prepared to listen.
Yeah. And then sort of extending on my previous question, what does it look like to actually start to listen to yourself? No, sort of considering that there are so many demanding other competing factors that we're surrounded by, what just for your like for you personally, where did you start? What did you start to do, and how did
Yeah.
that unfold for you?
So for me, it was meditation. It was also talking to a psychologist and a doctor
Yeah.
as well, which led to more of meditation, and it led to some more art. It led to me doing my Reiki level 1 and Reiki level 2 to understand more about energy. So for me, it really was, that starting point was meditation.
Yeah.
Just finding time in my day to slow down my very busy mind, um, just for that little bit. And that's what it was to start with. It was just that little bit. And I've got better and better at meditation as I've gone on, and I've got better and better at listening to what's going on in my body as time's gone on. But that start of that journey was just that real little bit of get out of my head. And so, yeah, that's the start of the journey, Hadi.
Yeah, wow. Okay. Um, sorry, I just realized I've totally sidetracked us. But please continue with, yeah, what was the transformation like? Yeah, the last 18 months anyway.
Yeah, so for me, it was getting comfortable with myself was the biggest part of the transformation. So um, I've always loved poetry, but I had this uh, almost you can call it a block that it wasn't part of the corporate world, particularly finance. Now, you can quite, and a lot of people would say, no, that's not real. You can be that, and you can be that, and you can be that, and you can. But that's a journey to get to that. And for me, I wasn't at that point. I was at the point of you could be one thing, but to be other things contradicted
Mm.
that thing. So I really had a battle with myself around. I'm not an artist. You have to be, and I really struggled with calling myself an artist because my art wasn't, in my eyes, wasn't good enough to be an artist, even though some people liked it. And I wasn't a poet. And I wasn't a banker anymore. That's sort of that wasn't what I wanted to be. So my journey over the last 12 months is getting comfortable with me, getting comfortable with those things. Comfortable now to say I am an artist, I am an author. I write poetry and I love it. I've still got all of the same skills that I had with leading teams and working with lots and lots of businesses. So it's about now not being one thing for me. It's about being comfortable to be all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were talking about the journey within getting comfortable with yourself, obviously at the beginning, just acknowledging what was going on for you and that real conflict. Can you take us through what that was like and how you sort of moved or gradually transitioned past it?
Yeah, it's gradual.
Yeah.
And it was very gradual, and it still is gradual in some ways. The transition past that for me, to start off with, it was just my health. So I was get myself to a point where I could get some of my memory back, where I could feel comfortable to do things without a lot of stress and anxiety. And I'm now just starting to get to that point where I've got more and more of my old capacity back. And that's one thing I think people really brush off to the side is the impact that has on people, and how debilitating it can be. And I didn't realize it until I paused.
Yeah.
And it, job wise, I was probably running at 3,000%, probably doing it at 50%. And that's the impact on it. So that journey of getting comfortable with me in the start, getting comfortable with handling stress and anxiety in a different way. That process was a lot of art. That process was a lot of meditation. That process was a lot of poetry.
Yeah.
That process was exercise. And so, interesting part for me is all of that was happening whilst lockdowns the first time around were on. And so some of it was challenging. Some of it was also, good to have family at home around me during that period of time, and kids at home. And my daughter actually introduced me to art. So she said to me, can you lay down and do some art with me, Dad? And I said, I was terrible at art at school. She said, just have a go. I had a go, and she said, wow, that's pretty good. And I actually found I enjoyed it. So, so that process was just, day to day. And certainly now it's more about getting back into work, getting back into a rhythm of utilizing all of those skills that I've gained over my journey to help others. And one of the things I touched on earlier was my love of people. And I've always mentored lots of people outside of my team. So I've always had my team that I've loved to grow, but I've always mentored people outside of my team. So outside of the organisation that I work for, and within the organisation that I work for, but outside of my team. And I've always got a lot of satisfaction out of that. And interestingly for me, that was one thing just before I finished my banking career, that had gone, and I actually found people a challenge. And when I left banking, one of the things that I said to myself is that I'll go and work with businesses, but I'm done with people. And that was just a reaction of, I've got all of my own stuff to deal with. And what I've learned now is that I actually took on everyone else's stuff as well. So as much as I told others not to, and as much as I was a great coach in terms of telling them to really take care of themselves, I realized the impact for me of actually taking that on board. And so, after a period of rest, basically, and then, a period of finding what it is that I really love, that passion for people development, that passion for coaching resurfaced again. And it's now resurfaced in a healthy way, that I've learned a lot about boundaries, and I've learned a lot about, not taking stuff on that when you're helping someone, that's up to them to do it. You can't actually do it for them, and you can guide, but you've actually got to leave it there. So, that journey has made me a much better coach coming out this other side of it now as well, Adi.
That's quite fascinating to see, yes, that comfort unfolding, but in those little situations and experiences, which has led to almost creating buffers within your brain to enrich and even stretch that cognitive and emotional capacity.
Yeah,
which is
it has.
fascinating. And I wanted to ask, you mentioned memory a few times. Can you tell us the parallels you've sort of witnessed with your memory in the stressful environment and your memory now, and a few insights along with
I think we can quite often just make excuses for things. And for me, I had two things happen very close to each other just before I started my next journey, I guess you could call it. And one was, I hit there was a big steel part of a sign in the middle of the road that I ran into him with the car that's fallen off the back of a truck.
Mm.
And when as soon as I hit it, I thought to myself, I've got room either side of that I could have gone, but
Yeah.
I just wasn't with it. So
Yeah.
I was literally, I was there, but I wasn't really there as such. And the other is I was going through a 60-kilometre zone.
Mm.
I was doing 60. I was actually doing less than 60,
Yeah.
but there were road signs up which I hadn't seen,
Mm.
and so my brain was on autopilot, and I was going through, and I'm at 60, and then I had a police car following me through,
Oh.
and he pulled me over, and he said, "What, what's going on?" And I said, well, "I'm not really sure why you pulled me over." And so, for me, those little incidents can just be brushed off and say, "Oh, I'm busy. I've got lots on."
Mm.
But it's amazing how preoccupied your brain gets and how you miss things.
Yeah.
And if I look back at my memory, I was getting to a point, I've always had a great memory. And I was getting to a point where I was forgetting things that I'd normally remember.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting now, sitting in between lockdowns when we could have people around. I had my brother-in-law around, and he was, we're talking about a few different things, and I was rattling off stuff from years ago.
Yeah.
And he said, how do you remember all that stuff? He said, you've never spoken about this before. And I said, no, not really sure. But it's amazing how, things now in a different environment, I am starting to remember a lot of stuff that I used to be able to do really, really well and recall really well. And in that period of time where I couldn't, and now it's starting to come back like that too. So, it's certainly, stress and anxiety has a big impact on our
Yeah.
cognitive abilities. And I've certainly experienced that firsthand. But I certainly wouldn't have told you at the time because I didn't know any different. I was just busy,
Right.
and I just felt busy and under pressure and lots on. But now with a bit of support and a bit of help and a bit of time, I can
Mm.
look back and go, no, that wasn't just busy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nathan, as you have become more comfortable getting to know you, and sort of even, yeah, not a redefinition, but you're getting to know your identities and all of that. How has the impact been on other parts of your life, your family, your friends, what has that journey been like? Again, looking at parallels to where you were to what you are doing now.
Yeah, I think the journey's been, I look now and it's in a great spot. So I'm a much better dad now. I've got time for the kids. I didn't have time. I've always loved the kids, but I never really had time for them, and now I've got time for them. I make it a priority now, regardless. And I'm a much better husband. I'm a much better human than where I was before. But if I look, certainly at the start, there was a lot of nervousness
Mm.
from those around me. My my kids. The initial, wow, what do you've had a great job, and now you haven't got that great job. What are you thinking? Type scenario, and what are you doing? And how do you tell a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old
Mm.
that no, mentally I'm much better off without that high stress job, and we will be fine.
Yeah.
But at the time they don't see that. What they see is a dad that went off to work every day and got paid well. And although he wasn't around, they knew and had some comfort on the other side that they could do the things that they wanted to do, particularly my 14-year-old son, who understood things a lot more,
Yeah.
understood that he had comfort with the income that was coming in, understood that he had a lifestyle that he liked. And so for him, it was very challenging. Um, the other thing that was really challenging is it's, we get caught up in labels.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very easy to say that I was a banker.
Yeah.
And so that's easy for others to identify with as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very easy for my kids to say, Dad's a banker.
Yeah.
To go through and say, well, what are you now? Well, I'm a lot of things now. And so, it is that process has been challenging because I haven't had to just take myself on that journey. I've had to take those around me on that journey, and I've felt nothing but support from them, and from my friends as well. Nothing but support
Yeah.
from family and friends. But it's been a journey because as they go on, they wonder what you're doing. I wonder what I'm doing. But it's ultimately, where I sit today is in a
Yeah.
much better place, and so glad that I've had the learnings that I've had.
Yeah.
But I look at my friends now and I challenge them in completely different ways because of the journey that I've been on. And they challenge me in very different ways as well. But yeah, it's good.
That's fascinating. And I have a question which I better write down before I do forget, because I will ask you sort of towards the end of our conversation. But so now we're at a point where you're comfortable with yourself. You're comfortable with identifying yourself as an artist, an author, a coach. Take us through the journey of your business. How, yeah, what happened there?
Yeah. So part of my business journey has certainly been a big part of, a big part of um, my health journey too, I guess
Mhm.
you could say. So my business journey, I had some great people around me that supported me early days with trying to get me into some things and helping me think through what it is that I'd wanted to do, post banking. And so that was great. And one of those is now my business partner. And I'd actually spoken at Lead Bod and Murray, which is a local leadership program.
Yeah.
I'd spoken at their conference
Yeah.
a couple of years in a row, and as keynote speaker, and the chair of that board, I'd had a bit to do with over that period of time, and we happened to touch base post me leaving, and found that we were both in a bit of a similar position in terms of not loving what we did 100%. She was obviously in a very different part of her journey to me at that period of time, but she was operating a business on her own, and so it's a lonely environment, but absolutely great at what she did, and she helped me through a lot of things, and we found that we had some real underlying core values that were the same, and some real passions that were the same in terms of how we wanted to help people or how we wanted to shape the world. And for us, it was about authentically helping people navigate their careers, and it was about people really understanding their own wellness needs. It was about having purpose, and it was about having choice. And over time, we really started to find that those things kept coming to the surface for us, and we got to a point where we said, let's have a go at doing some things together. And then the more we talked about that, we got to a point where we said, no, let's go into business together. We're passionate about that. And I'm so fortunate that my business partner's NLP mastery trained. She's been a counsellor. She's done theta healing, and she's a spiral practitioner. And so for me, a lot of the things that I needed at that period of time, she had, and
Yeah.
she'd done, and she coached to. And so she was, an on-hand coach that helped me through a lot of that whilst we were building the thought process around the business. So
Yeah.
the other thing that was, I guess, our next stage in that was the spiral. So actually, it's an 8-week process of understanding all of your anchors to emotions, and most of those are in that 0 to 7 period of childhood. So it helps identify those, and then helps you emotionally and energetically clear those. And so I did that 8-week process with Anita, and that's been a big part of my journey, and that's got me started on a journey of actually doing later this year. I'll do my own training to be a practitioner in that. But that's been the formation of the business, is around some common goals, and then utilizing, we both have corporate backgrounds, but we both have a real love for people and wellness. So that's how the business was formed.
That's interesting. Do you mind telling us a little bit more about the spirals and the 7 periods of childhood? Is that what you?
No, it's most of our attachments are
Ah,
formed in those infant years at 0 to 7, and so spiral is I guess a relatively new modality. It's might be 8 years old. I'm not exactly sure there, but it is a mix of things like Chinese medicine and
okay.
kinesiology and others. And I think that we can be skeptical, and it wasn't that many years ago that I was pretty skeptical
Yeah.
around different things myself. But to go through that process and just see how many of those attachments were bang on, that I could go back and go, I remember that. I remember a time. I remember that. I know where that would have been. I know how that would have happened. And then to see those patterns then continue to play out through life,
Yes.
and go, yes, I do that, and I know where that come from. So that for me, that was a big part of spiral, to not only the energetic side of clearing it, but that mental side of going, I see that pattern, I know what I do, and I know how I do that, and I know that I can do something about it.
Wow. And so, and with those anchors and patterns, is it geared towards, I suppose, not so much the negative, but the pattern you don't want, as opposed to, is there anything to do with positive anchors or positive patterns that you do?
Well, I think all the patterns that we form are both.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of it's got to do with how we're viewing our world at the time.
Yeah.
Whether our values, our beliefs, our patterns, our anchors, whatever it is, all of those things guide us. And they can guide us positively, and they can guide us in a challenging way, depending on our own state and then how we're viewing the world. And I think that anything that helps you identify what are your key drivers, so what are your values, what are your beliefs, or what are your patterns, if you can identify them, then you can actually do something about understanding whether or not they are working positively for you, or whether they are challenging you. And then that gives you the ability to do something about it. And so I think, one of my big learns over this period of time is I've done a lot of coaching, and a lot of it was around, what are the things that you want to do, not the things that you feel you should do.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'd always say to people is, what's your next best move, not what's the next logical move. Particularly in corporates, there's a career path, and that's the next logical move. And I'd always say, what's your next best move, not next logical move. And one of the things that I look at now is our ability to really understand what it is that drives us. Really helps us understand what is that next best move, not just the next move.
And that's a great segue question into, you've done the 8-week course was it to actually find out about those values and beliefs and driving triggers? For someone that isn't going through that 8-week process, how else do you do that? How else do you get to know your drive and or try to explore your values and beliefs?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We do values pendulum coaching now, which is an online survey that gets you to question, gives you problem statements around your values and beliefs. And so it's very, very accurate at drilling down to the things that are driving you. So for us, we use it in our business and coaching because we believe it's sort of similar to having 4 or 5 coaching sessions where you'd normally try and drill down around what drives people and where they're at. And, but that will normally take sort of 4 or 5 sessions, whereas we get that now in, someone spending 20 minutes doing that survey, and we get that before we coach them. So, it's amazing what technology does now for us, but we use that. But, having that's one thing.
Yeah.
Identifying with it or understanding it is another. And so that next part of, one of the things we do to start people off if they're not in that coaching mode yet is we'll get them to paint a picture that represents them. So if we were take away the labels of work and family, because most of us can identify really, really quickly with work or family.
Yeah.
But it's great. Our values evolve, and we evolve in the family. We evolve, but if you take away the labels of work and family, who are you? What drives you? And so quite often we'll get people to, as a starting point, just draw a picture or paint a picture that represents you outside of those things. Then it gets people in that mode of actually searching.
Yeah.
But what are the things that I love? What are the things that I enjoy? What are the and it is crazy that things like that drive us, that can light up our heart, that can make us smile, we rarely spend time thinking about. And they challenge us when you're asked to do it. That's sad. That's really, really sad that those things can challenge us. Those things that sit at our core that make us who we are, that we can't identify with those. So that's generally what we'll do to help start the process, Artie, with getting people to think about what drives them.
Sure. I'm actually going to try that activity. That sounds really really interesting. And I'm a speech pathologist by profession, and I'm thinking about if it was an activity I was doing with someone that had language difficulties, and someone that wasn't necessarily able to identify with this concept because it can be quite abstract. How do you sort of make it a little bit more concrete for for that population, and to make it more inclusive? That's sort of sort of going around in my head.
Well, I think a lot of there's a lot of things in play therapy, and there's a lot of things now with where we're actually using our senses, all of our senses, in the things that we do that really bring out a different side of us, rather than just using our head. And there's certainly a lot in that, and I certainly subscribe now to the fact that we need to look at, particularly when it comes to wellness, we need to look at all of those things. We need to look at what's driving us, in terms of positive or negative, or giving us energy or taking us energy, taking our energy when it comes to our mindset, when it comes to the energetic side or the spiritual side of our being, or our physical body, exercise, wise. It's not just the
Mm-hmm.
mental side, which most people would go straight to mental and or straight to physical
Yeah.
first when they think of wellness, and
Mm.
then they may go to mental first, but mental second. But you've got spiritual and you've got your energetic body and the emotional side as well. What are all of those things that either give us energy or deplete our energy in those things? And a lot of that can have a really big impact on us,
Yeah,
positive and negative.
that's right. And this might put you on the spot, Nathan, and I do apologize in advance, but wellness to you in one sentence, what does it, could you tell us what it means to you personally in one sentence?
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
Um, yeah, on the spot.
Yeah.
So, so wellness to me is really understanding what are those things that give you energy or take your energy. Because if we're depleted all the time,
Yeah.
then we get all of those other physical ailments that come from that.
Yeah.
If we can fill our cup from a wellness perspective, and if we understand what are those things that actually fill our cup, it's not about getting rid of all the other things, because there are times we need people in our life that are direct with us,
Yeah.
but we probably don't need them every second of the day being direct with us, when we need someone that gives us energy as
Yeah.
well. And that may be that person that's direct with you gives you energy. And that's the beauty of wellness, and that's the beauty of uniqueness, is what works for someone doesn't work for the other. And so there's no one fit. And so for me, that wellness side really is understanding what it is for you.
Yeah.
And you will be unique in that way compared to everyone else.
And what does it look like when something gives you energy? What does it feel like or look like or taste like?
Yeah. Well, it looks like this.
Yeah.
Artie, this conversation is giving me energy. It
Yeah.
looks like this. Yeah, it's up. It's exciting. You're pumped. You're ready to go, as opposed to the. Mm. And we need those messages sometimes too. But if that's all we've got in every aspect of our life, is that, then where are we getting this from? Where's that smile coming from? Where's that energy coming from that drives you, that motivates you to get out of bed, that goes, what's next?
Yeah.
And so that, to me, that's what that looks like.
Awesome. And what does purpose and passion mean to you?
Yeah, purpose. Purpose is a big one, that I've done a fair bit on, over this last 12 months
Mm.
for me. And you get to a point where you've had a fair bit of physical or mental illness, and you start to question, well, how long have I got here, and what am I doing with it, and what is your purpose? And for the majority of people that have been in any of those situations that I've ever spoken to, also they get to the point where they go, yeah, I start to question, what am I here for,
Yeah.
or what's it all about? For me, purpose for me is uh, having choice, being able to be all of those things, not being locked into one
Yeah.
thing. And I absolutely love people development. And so for me, if I had to say there's one purpose that I was here for, I know that I can hold space for people.
Yeah.
People have always, my whole life, have always overshared with me because they felt comfortable because I hold space for them to do that. And so I know that that's what I can give. And I know that it works from a coaching aspect to be able to hold that space for people,
Yeah.
to be able to do that and to be able to grow. So, for me, purpose-wise, I know that I'm following that when it comes to my coaching. I know that I'm following that when it comes to my art, because my art's quite expressive, and
Yeah.
there's some messages. Every one of my art pieces has an eye in it.
Yeah.
And the message there is it represents that we all see the world through different eyes. And so I've put an eye in somewhere in every piece is an eye. And hopefully, when people look at the art, that reminds them that, they've got one view, and that's their view of that painting, but everyone else is going to have a different view. And with my poetry as well, because the poetry, is a way to get people thinking about emotions. It's the way I think about emotions and make sense of emotions, and that all comes back to growth and to helping myself and others. So I think now I am at a point where I've got some alignment in my values and alignment in that purpose.
Yeah. Oh, that is so cool. It might have given me a few goosebumps. I love that concept of having an eye, because everybody has a different view of the world, different experiences, and that's what makes them them.
Yep, it is.
My next question is people development. It's a broad phrase, but tell us what it is.
Yeah, so my version of people development now is very different to what it used to be. So I think I was quite good at being structured when I started out as a people leader, having a clear purpose that the team developed and that the team bought into, that was had overarching principles that we lived by as a team in terms of that guided us, that sat outside of our performance measures.
Yeah.
They were the overarching of how we did business as a team and how we looked at each other, how we respected, how we wanted to be. And the people development that come off the back of that is how I used to develop people. It was about if they understand the job at hand outside of their performance measures, about how they want to go about it as a team, about the things that they want to achieve in community or with customers, or those bigger things. If they have that as a guiding principle, they will grow.
Yeah.
And the results, come with it, or they don't have those things or aren't energized by those things, and the results don't go. But if they're not energized by it, then it's the conversations around, well, what are you energized by? And you can help them get into something else.
Yeah.
And so I had lots of turnover in some of my teams, but not one of them on a formal performance improvement plan. It was all through conversations around what are those things that you loved or that you went through. For me, though, the part I think that I was missing was that I look at very differently now in that is the balance thing. So I used to think that I had balance, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And I used to think that I coached others around me with balance, but I didn't. And I used to think that and I probably did in some way, but not as a sole focus, or not as a big enough focus when I look back now. But I look at, I used to think that I was getting people to really understand what drove them.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, it wasn't. It was what drove them in that role,
Okay.
not what
Yeah.
really drove them. And if I look at people development now, I look at it in terms of understanding self.
Yeah.
So if you can lead self, if you can truly understand how you see the world in context of how others are, and you can be curious enough and have enough empathy with yourself, not to bolt yourself up around how you're currently seeing it, but to then work through and say, right, well, this is how it is. Where do I want to get to? If you can do that, then if you take those skills and you apply them to others, and you're curious with them, and you show them empathy, and you help them understand how they're currently seeing their world, and you help them understand how others currently experience their world.
Yeah.
Then they've got a choice of doing something about it. So for me, leadership is really about that self. It's about being authentic. It's about really, really understanding yourself first to then be able to lead others. And so my view around that very much, it is very different now what it was before.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. That's really interesting to think about in terms of getting to know yourself individually or independently, but then there is always a lot of the times that tie to others, and that's really what makes those connections.
Yeah,
Get to know
it
yourself.
is.
Yeah.
Get to know yourself.
Yeah.
I had a recent client, Artie, that my business partner and I have both been working with, and lovely, lovely, lovely person, who was absolute family driven, really respectful, but was coming across extremely arrogant in all of their interactions, and didn't see it. And it was really interesting when we went through the values side of it. It was so not aligned to the core values, but there were some things there that they held really, really dear and close that they just wouldn't budge on. And that ability not to step out and go, how is this coming across to others? Made them really, really arrogant, or made them seem really, really arrogant. And so, as soon as they were able to go, wow, okay, that my lack of, willingness to just slow back or ease back on that, is coming across like this. And, that's really changed, their understanding of their view of the world now, and how others are seeing that has really changed how they're going. And that's the challenge with, we can be driven by all the right reasons, and we can be relentless for all the right things, but the message isn't clear to others, because we're not understanding how that message is coming across.
Correct. And something that you were saying that made me think of the concept theory of mind. When children go through cognitive development to try to understand that there are other people, and empathizing or understanding that other people also have feelings and they view the world differently, but this is almost like theory of mind at an adult level.
It is in a sense. And I look at a lot of the leadership stuff that I've done in the past puts people in sort of 4 categories. So, you're analytical, et cetera, and then if you understand how people are, then you naturally get along with your other analytical thinkers, or if you're big picture, et cetera. But this takes it, I guess, a different approach to that, where yes, there's some commonality in that, but there's also, if you've had experiences where your personal power has been shot for whatever reason, then you will relate to someone that is in that same state, that aren't in their power at all, that they're really, really, really retracted. And that doesn't matter what personality type they are.
Correct.
But you'll relate to them because of where you're at. Or if you're really, really stepped into your power, and we can step into our power in a positive way, or we can step into our power in a way that's quite harmful and negative. But you will relate to others that are in that as well. And so this takes that view on it. It's not just the 4 quadrant boxes, it's all of those other things that play with, or at play, that are driving you values and beliefs wise, to do certain things that have impacts on how you act and how others perceive you.
Absolutely. That sort of, every action has a reaction.
It does.
whichever, and then the ripple effect or impact or wherever that's getting to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the word ripple. One thing I don't think we've ever spoken about. I'm not sure whether you've seen our website, but um, initially when my business partner and I, Anita and I, were talking about business, one of the things that kept coming up for us is ripples.
Yeah.
And we always bring it back to we want to create ripples.
Yeah.
And we've actually got that now in be the ripple, create the wave is sort of a little slogan that we go by. And people probably have no idea what it means if they see our website, but be the ripple, create the wave is that be that positive change, because it does create ripples, and those ripples can create waves. So understand yourself, spend the time to understand yourself so that you can have that change in yourself, spend time with others, be that change. It's a little bit corny, but it does, and each person can create that ripple.
Yeah. And it really does resonate at this moment in time that, you know, if one person is going to take the load, the burden's going to become too heavy too quickly. Whereas when it's shared, it's, much more manageable, but also others are involved in that creation of change.
Absolutely.
Impact. Yeah. Nate, is there anything I haven't, oh, actually, sorry. Yes, there is something I haven't asked you. I have the questions marked. A while ago, you mentioned that, or you posed the question, what do you tell your children when they sort of have witnessed the change, or, you know, you were going to work one day and then you stopped the next? What did you tell them? I was just curious.
I don't think I got that right to start with, and I'm not sure I ever got it right. The thing that I was honest with them about is that I got to a point where health wise, it was not working for me, and I needed to change that. And so that part of and they could see that themselves, with the physical signs of where I was at. And so, for me, it was just reinforcing that, this change, although you may not see it yet, this change is a positive. And this change is for all the right reasons. And you're almost telling yourself that as you're telling them that as well. But that was all I could do. There's no this is magic, or this is all rainbows. It wasn't. It's and if I look now, my relationship with them is different, and it's deeper. It's way deeper than it's ever been. I've always had the surface cuddles and hugs and read to them or sing to them. Love to sing to them, and they sing, but it's much deeper now.
That's beautiful. And is there any question I haven't asked you, or something you've wanted to say that I haven't even touched upon in any way?
We've touched on all of it and more, I think, Artie, through it. I think there was one question you asked me at this before all this was around, what does a utopian world look like for me? And the mind boggles when you start thinking about questions like that, and it goes to all of the cliche things. And so I've tried to stay away from all the cliche things, but for me, in a simple sense, is a utopian world would put people first, and I don't feel we've got that today in the world that we're sitting right at the moment. And so for me, that utopian world is, if we were genuinely looking at people's wellness,
Yeah.
if we're genuinely looking at people's quality of life, if we're genuinely designing this world from scratch in regards to all of its systems, so it's financial systems, it's everything. What would it look like if you put people first? And I think that it would look very different to what it does today. So that would be my utopian world.
Beautiful. And the final question, 3 to 5 key takeaways for anyone in the world listening to this.
Takeaway 1, listen to your body, because it will tell you things that your mind won't. Our mind's really, really great at protecting us, but it sometimes protects us at our own peril too, because it just allows us to fight on. So listen to your body, and if you've got aches and pains all over and things aren't quite right, then take the time to understand why they're not quite right. And if you know in your heart that there's something missing, things are okay, I don't need to change, everything's okay, I'm fine, there's lots of people in the world worse off than me. But if in your heart you know that there's something missing, explore it. On that point, I'd say, my next point is be curious. And so I said it before in regards to be curious and approach things with more curiosity and more empathy. And I think that's true for the people around you. Approach those people around you with more curiosity and more empathy, but approach yourself with more curiosity and empathy as well. I think the other one is get clear on your own values, beliefs, and goals. So, and when I say get clear on them, spend some time actually getting to know them, getting to know who you are amongst them, where you sit at the moment amongst them, and where you want to get to. Because quite often our goals are very, very surface driven, and our values and beliefs that we think drive us don't actually drive us. And so I'd say spend time doing that. The only other one I'd say is in that be honest with yourself realm. Be honest with yourself on all levels. So if you need help, get help. Don't be too proud to say that you need help. And there's a lot of and the world is certainly changing. And I look at what my kids are learning, and so my kids do. They learn about meditation, and they've got different things in their classroom. My wife's a school teacher, and she does mindfulness with kids every day. And so the world is changing, but certainly through some of my chapters of life, and this chapter now I'm learning more about all of those things. But through my earlier chapters of life, we weren't taught about any of those things. And so, don't beat yourself up. It doesn't come naturally. So get help. Understand what it is to get out of your mind and, do meditation. Start to understand a few of those things. But my message there is get out of your own way. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Nathan, for spending this time generously sharing about your chapter. And we will put a link to your website in the notes, and so people can find you, and we'll put the Instagram handles and any other social handles for people, to see what you're doing and if they would like to connect. But everyone else, Thanks in advance for watching this chapter or listening to it on podcast. Please feel free to share it with anyone that might connect. It is, yeah, the aim to connect people, and you never know where that goes. The ripple.
Thank you for your time, Artie.
No, that's all good.